Okay, hello everybody. So I'm Alex. Okay, I'm also from the University of Huddersfield. Just before I kick off, I would just like you to raise your hands if you think it's going to be difficult to write a case study. So does anybody think it's going to be difficult? Because you all need to do it. So anyone thinks it's going to be difficult? Honestly. Thank you. Okay, Anna, so we've got one. Okay, so there's a few hands going up. Okay. Some of you might be reluctant to put your hand up in case I ask you a question, I presume. But it's always risky. But actually, you guys are collecting a lot of information on your organisations. So, in some ways, you could look at a case study and you could think, well, we know what has happened in this organisation, we've got the information, to some degree you will be experts, it's just getting it down on paper. But for those of you who did raise your hands, I'm glad to see that some of you have, because it's not that easy. So, if you consider a news story, okay, so if we look at a news story, Julie mentioned President Trump. I don't like to mention what Julie did earlier. And there's a lot of news stories about him. And if you read different news stories in different papers, there could be a very different interpretation and depiction of what happened. And that's the same with case studies. So your case studies, it's not just a case of taking your information and putting it on paper. You are actually making very important decisions when you come to write it. So you are thinking, you need to decide what information do we include, what information don't we include, and that is going to affect the message that people take away. Julie talked about building an argument. You guys are the ones who are building an argument in this. So actually, a case study is not just a description. Okay, you make a real impact on it. So what I'm going to do today, or look to do, is just talk you through how you may want to structure your case study and some of the things you might want to look in different sections. And in some ways it's difficult to do that because Danuka has spoken obviously about the contextual nature of case studies. So as you guys have been talking this morning, we've got manufacturing organisations, we've got service organisations, we've got organisations in very different sectors, very different countries, very different things happening in those organisations. So actually to give you a structure to write a case study is difficult because it's going to depend to some degree on the organisation itself. So I'll give you this structure with a little bit of a health warning, and I will, it's a high level structure, so you need to recognise that actually what goes within that may change slightly. So, in terms of case study structures, I think there's two main ways you may want to look at structuring your case study. The first of these, and this links heavily to what Julie was saying earlier, the first of them looks at telling a story. Okay, so what we call a narrative. Okay, so this is where you would introduce us to key critical events that have happened in the organisation. So the team from Lithuania, I think it was earlier, were talking about a merger happening in the company. This is a big event that has happened and that is having to be managed as they go forward. So a narrative structure will tend to give you events in a chronological order. So the first event that happened you will address first, then you will go on to the next, then you will go on to the next. But just to reiterate my earlier point, you can't put everything in there. So you need to decide which are the key events that you include. Okay. The next structure that you can use is what I would call an issue structure. So essentially the difference here is that rather than introducing key events and structuring your case study around those, you can structure it around, okay. So from looking at the presentations this morning, some of you focus more on the narrative and telling us what had happened in the organisation. Others of you looked at it very much from a HR issues perspective. So this is one issue, this is another. So it's very much up to you which of those is going to apply in your situation. So you don't need to worry too much about taking notes for the rest, because I'm going to give you all a copy of a handout.
On the model.
I assume we'll put it on Moodle. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So first thing in a case study is an abstract. Okay. Most of you, I imagine, will know what an abstract is when you've been reading journal articles and such like. It's essentially a summary of the case before you read it. Okay? So if somebody is looking at your abstract of your case study, they can make a decision, is this relevant to me? So you would briefly introduce the issues that are going to be discussed, the topic, and briefly mention the company and the industry without giving detail there. Okay. Next step, and this is a really important one, introduce the organisation. So you guys, as I said, are pretty much going to be experts in your case organisations. The reader is not. So the reader is not going to know anything about your organisation at the beginning. These are case studies that are going to be targeted towards people in other SMEs who may have no knowledge of these companies. So you need to give them that information. You need to set the scene. So if you imagine reading a novel, if you read a novel, generally, when a new character is introduced or a new situation or location is introduced, the first thing you will do is describe it. Okay, that's the first thing that the author will do, to set the scene, and essentially that's what you're doing. So you want to be talking about the history of the organisation. You want to tell us key information about the organisation today. So how big is it? How many employees does it have? A number of you mentioned that this morning. And that's obviously key for this project because we're focusing on SMEs. And a small or micro organisation is very different to a medium organisation which is on the brink of becoming a large organisation. So how many employees do they have? What customers do they serve? What are the key products and services? Okay. And you can make really good use of statistics here. So full-time equivalents will be really important for telling us how large your organisation is. But also things like revenue. And you may want to include some information like the gender composition of the workforce, because that may be a key HR issue. That may link to one of your issues. Okay, so you painted the picture of the organisation, you then need to paint the edges of the picture. Okay, so Julie talked about there being a boundary around the case, but that boundary does not stop at the organisation. Okay, the context has an important impact. And again this morning, you know, we saw things like an ageing population having an impact, location having an impact, a lack of employees, low unemployment rate having an impact. So you need to decide which elements of the context are really critical for your study. And again, key statistics can be important here. So things like the composition of the labour force, which a number of you talked about this morning. Okay. And then you've got a choice. So, if you want to follow the narrative approach, at this point, you probably want to be identifying an event. It may just be one, it may be a number of events to explain. Okay. So, for these, you know, you need to include a detailed explanation. We need to know who the actors are. So if you imagine a story, there are always actors taking place in that. But the important thing is it doesn't just become a description of the event. Okay? So Julie talked obviously about bringing in theory. Okay? So this is a great opportunity to start telling us how this event is significant to HR issues and to the organisation itself as a whole. Okay? So, although this is an event that you're explaining, the ultimate goal is to link it to HR and a HR issue. Alternatively, you may decide to structure it around issues. Okay? So, this is where you may say one key issue in this organisation is an issue around retention. Okay? And again, we need a detailed explanation of what the issue is. But we need you to tell us the situation, the event. So although you are leading with the issue, okay, we still need to know the event. So is there a retention issue because of a particular thing that's happened in the organisation or the local context, for example? And again, this is really important. What is the relevance to the organisation? So as Julie said earlier, there are different perspectives on HR. So HR is sometimes seen as incredibly key within organisations. In others, it is sometimes seen to be, how do I put this, not exactly belittled, but it's given less importance than it should be, or that I think it should be. So highlight the significance. Okay, an organisation would not be an organisation without its people. Okay. And then we get on to your proposed solutions. So I realise at the moment you guys are not at a stage where you are ready to do this, but this is something to be thinking about for the future. So what tools are you thinking of introducing to address this issue, and how are they going to help to address the issue? Okay. And then the conclusion. So summarise the case for the reader at the end, but also draw out what the key messages are. This is the last opportunity for you to leave the reader with those messages that you want to take away. So reiterate those, make those messages clear to the reader. Okay. And then finally, so these case studies are targeted towards those within SMEs. If an owner-manager of an SME reads your case study, you don't want them to stop there, okay, to read it and think, oh, that was nice story, nice issues. You want them to go further, you want them to engage with it. You want them to start trying to potentially apply what they've learned there to their situation. So questions are really important as a way to initiate that and to get them reflecting on those things. So you've proposed a HR tool. What do they think about that proposed HR tool? Can they critique it? Is there anything they'd do differently, for example? Okay. So in terms of structure, that is it. And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you all in a minute a template as well. I don't know how we're doing for time, but we'll hopefully get a little bit of time. Oh no, we might not actually. In your groups. But I'll give you a template that you can be working on anyway. But just before I finish, I just want to give you a few more general tips when you're writing. Okay. You could present the same information within a case study, and it could either be really, really boring, or it could be really interesting. Okay, that is affected by how you write it, what language you use. Okay, so Julie was talking about having a plot, having a story. Okay, the best stories are ones that use emotive language, that use engaging language, that use language that will capture a reader and draw them in. And it's very much the same for case studies. So you can have a very factual case study with lots and lots of statistics, but actually if you're not grabbing the reader in, that's an issue. So imagine that you're reading or you're writing a great story. Okay, it's got to be factual, so we're not saying make things up, but the way you write it can make a big difference. Try not to overcomplicate things as well. Okay, as I said, you guys are experts in these organisations. You have a lot of knowledge. Okay, the reader is not going to be able to take all of that knowledge in, so you need to try to simplify things there as well. And then eye-catching titles. So this morning you've all thought of great titles for your case studies, but your case study will be structured, will be divided, should I say, into subsections. Okay, so think about engaging titles that you can have. Okay, so for each event or for each issue, how can you put that wording into place rather than saying, having a subtitle that is merger? Okay, how can you make it interesting? How can you make somebody draw into that? Okay, so as I said, I was going to get you to do a template, but I think time-wise, by the time we've started it, it would be time to finish. So I will hand out the structures so that you've all got that information. As I said, these are high-level guidelines. You don't need to follow these necessarily. It's your choice. You don't, these are not set. They're just to give you an idea of what you can work with.